everybody, and welcome to the Week in Review, where we have an unscripted look at all the big news of the week that was. We've got a lot to talk about this week, so jumping straight into it. There was a lot of game announcements because we are in the pre-E3 season now, and all the developers and publishers that want to get their big bits of news out before the show itself starts are doing so right at this moment. Sega announced a whole bunch of stuff around Sonic and also the new Virtua Fighter, which has been developed by the Yakuza team and looks very good indeed. But for me, the big one was the Square Enix Dragon Quest show. Square Enix had a lot of Dragon Quest stuff to show off. I think it was 5 or perhaps even 6 different games. They include a mobile puzzle game, which actually looks very charming. I can't remember what that's called off the top of my head, but it does look very cute. There was also a offline version of Dragon Quest X announced, which is, of course, the MMO that was only released in Japan. Hopefully this offline version does get a global release because I am really interested to play it, and I think that I would prefer the non-MMO version anyway. I'm not the world's biggest fan of MMOs and the way that the player interaction tends to undermine the fantasy a little bit. So, yeah, I'm definitely going to play that if I get a chance to. The big one for me was the announce of the remake of Dragon Quest III. So Dragon Quest III is a very old game. It was an NES one, I believe, from memory anyway. And the remake is going to go all the way. They're actually applying the Octopath Traveler aesthetic and engine to it. So you're looking at very high detail sprites in a kind of mesh between 3D and 2D worlds. And it looks really, really good. The last big announcement, which I have written about on digitallydownloaded.net. I have a lot of thoughts about it. They're not all of them are positive, but go and check out my article for that because I'm not going to cover it in the scope of this video. But they announced Dragon Quest XII, and on top of that they announced that it was going to be a dark, brooding, moody Dragon Quest, which I don't think fits with the series. They didn't show anything of course, so I'm still open to it being a very good game. But at the moment, I have concerns about it. Until we actually see it in action, I think I'm going to continue to have those concerns. But yes, Dragon Quest seems to be in a good spot. There's a lot of stuff being done with it, and let's just see how all that plays out. So the next bit of news regards another game release, but it was interesting enough to talk about separately, I think. Demon Slayer. Just about everybody who knows anime knows Demon Slayer at the moment. It is taking the world by storm. They've just announced that over in America it is now the second highest grossing anime film of all time, and that amounts to $44 million or so in box office receipts alone, which is really impressive for an anime film. It is, of course, a massive hit in Japan, and the film is doing the rounds around the rest of the world. It's going to be a very profitable thing, and that is pretty impressive given that the anime itself is only one season in. So a lot of popular anime run for many seasons before they start to get box office traction and the movies start to do numbers. But this one, we're still very much at the very start of it, and it has a long way to grow, you would imagine. And good on it. It is very good anime. I do enjoy it a lot myself. I haven't seen the film yet, but I did love the the original first season. Huge fan of Nezuko. She is great, and yeah, it's really good. So there's also a game on the way. And you do have to be a little bit cautious, I guess, with anime tie-in games, especially given what Bandai Namco and Spike Chunsoft in particular have done with them. They take a very kind of cookie-cutter approach to their anime games in a lot of cases, whether it's Dragon Ball Z, One Punch Man, the J-Stars, whatever they called that one. There's a lot of them, and they're very cookie-cutter, and they don't always do a good job of really capturing the essence of the base property. There's a couple of good anime tie-in games. They tend to be made by Koei Tecmo, and they apply the Warriors Musou formula to them. They're still a little bit cookie cutter, I guess, but Koei Tecmo does a better job, I think, of interpreting the base appeal of the anime property. Anyway, point being that this one is not a Koei Tecmo anime game, but it does look very good, and it is worth keeping an eye on. We weren't sure if it was going to get an English release, and so the news here, and it took me 2 minutes to get to it, I guess, the news is that it is going to get an English release. At the moment, it is only going to be released in English in Asia, so you'll need to import it from Singapore or Hong Kong or one of those other markets, which is commonly what happens these days. If they can't get worldwide distribution for a game, they'll still localize it into English, but only release it in Asia and then they know that people that are interested in the game are going to pick it up. So keep an eye out for it. We will try and cover it on DDNet, and if it is as good as it looks, be sure to save some pennies to import it, whether you buy it on the digital storefront or actually import a physical copy if they make one. Okay, so the next bit of news we have is some very positive news indeed regarding the changing demographics of people playing games. Sony shared some data regarding its player base this week, and on the PlayStation 4 and 5, 41% of players are now female. That is a massive jump on the PlayStation 1, where only 18% of the player base were female. In other words, whereas before there was maybe 1 in 5 players were women, now that has jumped to almost half, which is of course much more accurate to the actual demographics of society out there. And it goes to show that video games are increasingly a mainstreamed thing. So back on the PlayStation 1, video games were still seen as this kind of male-dominated hobby. And on top of that, because it was a niche activity, because it was very specific in who it targeted, if you were a big gamer, then you were seen as having some kind of, social issues, I guess, for lack of a better term. It was fine to be a big fan of films. It was fine to read 1,000 books a year. It was fine to listen to music endlessly. But if you played video games too much, then you were not a desirable within society. That's changing. Now it is very mainstream. Now the participation is universal across pretty much every age and gender demographic. And that does help legitimize gaming further. It means the conversations that we can have are broader. We can start to have conversations within the context of the real world. The gaming world does impact on the real world in the same way that every other art form does. So it informs discussions, it responds to events that are happening out there. It creates discussions about the way that art and reality interact. So all of that is now much more mainstreamed, I guess, and this data kind of backs it up. It's not anything we didn't already know. We already knew that this transition and this process of legitimization was happening over the last generation and a half, but it is nice to have some kind of hard data to show that video games are changing, they're for more people, and it's now fine for games to also be broader. That's the other thing. Back when games targeted a specific niche, all games needed to be very mindful of what that niche wanted to play. These days, the market is so huge, and you've got everything from those big AAA blockbusters right through to very creative, quirky little experiences which are designed for people that would never look away from the AAA blockbuster. You've got a much broader range of people playing games now, which is good for the industry. So next up, we've got some news, which is not news just yet, but it is something that has been noted, and it may well become news very soon. Masahiro Sakurai, who is one of Nintendo's brightest stars at the moment, has told people that he is considering early retirement. And let's be clear, it would be very early retirement. He's by no means an aged veteran within Nintendo right now. He has been around for a fair while, but he has still got many years of work ahead of him potentially. So whether when he's talking early retirement, he's talking about stepping out of the games industry entirely to do something different, or actually retiring, because I'm sure he's made his money doing what he has. Whatever it is, he is looking at getting out of the games industry. And he did so because he had some kind of revelation that has made him realize that he needs to think about what's next after video games. And he has been very committed to video games throughout his career. He was very famously, a couple of years ago, he got himself in a very sick situation because he was overworking on Smash Brothers. And that would certainly put a strain on anybody and make them consider early retirement for sure. But he will be a loss for Nintendo. He is the one that is managing Smash Brothers, which is Nintendo's perhaps biggest property, most valuable one. And it's certainly the one that is just prominent in a way that most of Nintendo's other work is not. He's also the guy that created Kirby, so he's also a creative within the company, and they would certainly feel the loss of losing him. But yeah, you can just imagine how much pressure would be put on somebody trying to manage Smash Brothers. It has become such a big, bloated, unwieldy mess of a game with, 60-odd characters now and all those levels, and constantly to balance, tweak it, and the pressures that the fan base put on that game. Like, they're really passionate about Smash Brothers, which is good on one level, of course, because if people are passionate about something, then they're passionate about something, and passion comes from a place that is generally seen as positive. But at the same time, it does put a lot of pressure on the people making those games, and I would certainly not be surprised if Sakurai does decide that he is done with the video game industry after this. It would surely have been a positive experience for him, but it's just exhausting. That's the thing. That's the basic reality. You get exhausted when you work so passionately on something for so long. Okay, so for the final story this week, we're going to be stepping out of video games to talk about a film thing, but it is such a massive news story that it has implications that will affect the entire entertainment industry. Amazon has announced that it is buying MGM for $8.45 billion. That is a massive amount of money. MGM is known as the studio that creates the James Bond films primarily, but it has been around for a very, very long time, and it has an obscenely large library of films and heritage that Amazon has just bought into. And it is a little bit interesting and questionable why Amazon thought that the studio was worth that much money. The rumors were that Apple was in the running for it as well, but stepped away from it when the price got up to $6 billion, so it wasn't worth $6 billion to Apple, and Amazon significantly overpaid for that. But it's also interesting because the main license that Amazon gets out of this, the James Bond license, it still has to share with another company, Eon Productions, which owns the distribution rights for Bond in a lot of countries. So Amazon doesn't get exclusive control over that. Another big property that MGM had was a cable network thing in America, and Amazon is directly competing with cable networks and has no interest in setting up its own cable network. So the value of that part of the acquisition is probably not quite as high as would seem. It seems like they have slightly overpaid for this one, to be frank. Just looking at what they've got out of it and the numbers, it seems like Amazon has bought this as a way of muscling into a sector that it has struggled a little bit with in terms of original content creation, and this seemed to be the only thing that was on the market that would let them get a piece of the pie. So they do have a piece of the pie now. MGM is, of course, a huge property. It has a lot of stuff that Amazon can now play with, and obviously Amazon's going to use that to try and boost its own streaming service, which I guess gets me to my point of concern with all of this. This is another big consolidation within the film industry that is going to try and pressure people into another service. Because remember, you've got an Apple service, there's Netflix, there's Stan in Australia, there's Hulu in America, there is Disney's one, which is of course massive, there's Amazon's one, which is just now being boosted with the James Bond acquisition. All of those services together make for an awful lot of money that you need to pay if you want to get access to all these films. And more these films are only being made available on this stuff. It's getting harder to buy them independently of their streaming services. So this consolidation increases the monopoly of a very small number of entertainment companies over the big majority of the entertainment that is now produced. And it is effectively, they are now starting to force people into too many of these streaming services. So all the convenience and all the cost effectiveness that this stuff promised is now starting to bite us all on the backside. I've been saying that for forever. I've always said that streaming services are a problem and we need to really consider whether we support them, but people obviously continue to support them and now they are going to start to pay for that. Anyway, that's enough for this video. Thank you very much for tuning in. Do let me know your thoughts in the comments, of course. And it's the end of the week, so have a great weekend, everybody. I will be doing streams. I've got a lot of games to play, some really good ones. And you can see me do a stream tonight as I record this, Friday night, and I'll do another one on the weekend as well. Please do check out digitallydownloaded.net. Please do like and subscribe if you enjoy my videos. And please consider backing me on Patreon. You can do that, you can do that for $1 a month. And if you do, everybody who backs me on Patreon gets a digital print magazine, which is exclusive to Patreon backers. It's 48 pages of analysis and history and art and culture and all kinds of stuff. It's a really nice magazine, I do say so myself, and I think it's pretty good value for supporting me for just $1 a month. Alright, thanks everyone, see you next week.